The project I'm sharing with you today is one of those legacy projects. In our case, it's 20 years. For some of you, you may be in the middle, or just starting your 20-year project. In others, you might be in the middle of it. Through this presentation, I hope to share tips on how to sustain your progress and make it to that finish line. My 12 years experience working for the City of Brantford's Greenwich Mohawk project has highlighted two key strategies that contributed to our success. First, we had project champions representing each area of involvement. Second, we had open and honest dialogue, even with people who yelled or screamed their opposition. It wasn't easy, but we kept talking to them, and it was important to do that. A bit of background on this project. Like many places, we have older industrial sites that are vacant for decades. For most brownfields, the owners stop paying taxes, they become informal garbage dumps, and a place for vandalism. There were a series of fires at the site, and when there are barrels of who knows what all over, this is a problem you can't ignore. For the first 5 years, we were figuring out who was responsible. After several failed tax sales, the city accepted ownership, but we convinced both the province and the federal government that they should pitch in money. The argument, these companies contributed to the national economy back in the day. Why should only the municipalities suffer the cleanup costs? The next 5 years was trying to find private sector partners to help the city remediate and redevelop the site. But after several failed attempts, the city decided to take on the remediation ourselves. We hired a remediation contractor to take on this large-scale project. 74% of the soil was treated on-site, the rest disposed of off-site. We had to deal with 25% more contamination than we estimated. Ultimately, the city spent $41 million, of which $17 million came from the federal government, $5 million from the provincial government, and we applied for a green municipal fund loan to cover the rest. So the first success strategy was that we had project champions representing all areas of involvement. The first were local citizens of the neighborhood who helped to mobilize initial action, and over time, they helped share information with their fellow citizens to promote the benefits of addressing this environmental hazard. Another champion was our political leadership. The local ward councillor made sure the issue didn't fall off council's radar, and she advocated for funding. We invited then Prime Minister Paul Martin to tour the site, and in all the photos, you can see Councillor Chesky Smith right there talking his ear off. That's what you have to do to get money, right? And lastly, our technical and municipal staff, me and many others who did the grunt work over all those 20 years. We had to implement the program, overcome each new hurdle, and make sure the project got done. These project champions at all levels were key to sustaining progress through this prolonged project. Now for the second success strategy. We had open and honest dialogue with people who were impacted, even when it wasn't easy to do. One day I had 40 phone calls and even more emails with complaints. Angry folks who had questions and concerns. Naturally, I wanted to stop answering the phone that day. And the reason for their complaints was this. During the remediation program, we were finding a lot of oil. Think of that smell. Think of it extra thick and extra dark. The smell was released when we opened up the site and discovered that bunker fuel oil had been historically dumped over many years. We were cleaning it up, and that was a good thing, but that didn't mean the smell didn't cause unintentional nuisance. People started complaining of headaches, nausea, and difficulty breathing. They couldn't sleep at night, they couldn't go outside, and so this was bad. And even if our monitoring said it wasn't harmful, it still wasn't acceptable. My hardest and most valuable complaint came from Mary. She could shame a cowboy with her foul language. After the third phone call, when I couldn't even get a word in, I was fed up, but I knew she was fed up too. How would you handle a really angry person who makes it hard to even talk to her? Well, I decided I would visit Mary at her house, and she yelled and screamed at me, this time in person. But when she was done, we talked about how nice her garden was. And then we said goodbye and talked to you later. And after that, Mary and I talked almost every week until the project was finished. I respected her concerns, and she respected that I listened. like really listened. So the second strategy is really important to these longer projects that don't have easy solutions. People want to be heard and to know that we accept their critiques and concerns. At first, we try to say long-term gain, short-term pain. But while cleaning up the site was a good thing, people shouldn't have to suffer in the process. So we ended up putting the project on hold for a few months. And we said, you're right, we have to try harder. And we did. We implemented many new odor controls and different digging practices. We did most of our work in the winter. We had hourly odor checks, and we used industrial air fresheners like the one you see in this photo. And it worked. We finished the project, a few months behind, but we finished, and with the residents applauding and happy with the outcome. I spoke at an engineering conference a year later. A comment made to me was, they were impressed that I acknowledged the complaints, because many would have ignored them and kept going because cleaning up the oil was the priority. I'm an urban planner by profession, and incorporating citizen feedback is expected. So that comment helped me realize how important this second strategy is. And facing conflict doesn't mean there has to be a bad outcome. There's still progress in facing that conflict and allowing it to happen. So once again, the two key strategies that worked for us were that we had project champions representing each area of involvement, and we had open and honest dialogue and room for conflict too. We needed champions at every level to make sure the project got done. And we needed the open and honest dialogue to make sure that people didn't block the project simply because they felt neglected or that their concerns didn't matter. It's a little hard to show this last photo of this site. It is a remediated brownfield, but it basically looks like that, a brown field. The next stage of the project is the redevelopment, and I'd encourage you to click on the link below to see conceptual images on how we envision that next stage. That next project is likely to be another 20-year legacy project, but now we know how to ensure that we continue to make progress over the long term. Thanks for having me.